In this episode, we'll use the player input we set up and make the player attack. However, many of the things we implement to make the player attack will also apply to the samurai NPC. So we want to make sure to keep in mind what we want to put into the base, into the parent, and what we want to put into the child. So this is something we need to look out for. First of all, we can clean up the tabs because we have too many things open. We can just right click here and close tabs to the right. Then go to the content drawer and open the BP Samurai, which is the parent of the samurais. In the BP Samurai, we want to get a reference to game mode on begin play. And it's probably best to do this first, so we can move this to the right to create some space. And right click into the open field and get game mode. We're not going to use the overlap and tick, so we can just select these and delete to create some more space. Then drag off from the return value and cast to BP, cast to GM dual, which is our custom game mode. And connect the execution. And as GM dual should be dragged off and promote to variable. And here we can call it game mode. And connect this and also connect this back again. So now on the begin play on the samurai, we get a reference to the game mode and have it saved here, so we can use it at later steps in our blueprint. What we want to do now is create a new custom event down here, right click and custom event, and call it attack. Again, this is something that both the player and the NPC are going to use. So here we can get the game mode, scroll down here to the variables, get the game mode, and from it we can get the phase. This is the enum we created before, which tells us if we're waiting, attacking, in the intro state, or wherever our game phase is at. And here we can drag off and switch on E phase. Connect the execution. And during the intro, we're not going to execute anything because we don't take player inputs. And on finish, we're also not going to execute anything. But there are two cases, the wait and the draw case. In the wait case, we want to save a failed attempt and prevent the character from attacking again. In the draw phase, we just want to successfully execute the attack. To display a failed attempt, we want to go to the viewport and on this paper sprite, add another sprite. So just select this and click on add and look for sprite again. And we can call this cross to make it easier to understand. So for the cross, we want to select it and under source sprite, look for the T-cross sprite. And we don't want to have this inside of our body, but we can drag this up here and want to have it near the face. So it's very visible. But you can see we again have these issues with translucency and the layers fighting for which one is dominant. So again, here for the cross, we go to the material and translucent unlit and look for the translucency and set this to 2. So it is a higher value than this sprite, which is 1. So it will be shown on top of this player character. And we can exit out of this search. But now the cross is always shown, which is something we don't want. We can create a new function here under functions and call it set cross visibility and to drag out the cross and here set visibility. Connect the execution and connect the new visibility here to create a new input, create a reroute node. And this is it, but we could easily add more on top here if we ever needed to. So back to the begin play. After we do all of this and the slide in, we can drag out the set cross visibility and set new visibility to false. So when we start the game now, the cross is not visible. Right, in the preview it is visible, but when we start the game it's not visible, which is exactly what we need. But you can see that for our toad it's in a weird position. So we can also open up the BP Samurai NPC. If you get this view, click on Open Full Blueprint Editor and go to the viewport, and here we can see the cross. And we can simply select it and drag it over to the other side to show it here. But we also want to change the direction. So we can go here to rotation on the X. Actually, not on the X, I think on the Y, and set this to 180. So now the cross will be flipped around. And click compile and save. On the Samurai, also compile and save. And now you can see here that the cross is being shown correctly. And again, if we start, it's gone. So in the next step, we want to show the cross if we have a failed attempt. So now that we have this set up, we can go back into the BP Samurai and go down here to our attack custom event. And if we press the button during the wait period, we can simply call set cross visibility and set this to true. And compile and save. However, we still need to call this function from our BP Samurai player. So we can open up the content drawer, go to our BP Samurai player, and here, where we have the input action for the attack and print a string, we can call attack. And since this is a function that's available on our parent, we can simply call it like this. And now we can compile and save and start the game. And I'm just going to keep on pressing space, and you can see that the X mark is showing up. But that alone is not enough, so we have to go back to the BP Samurai and not only show the cross mark, but also save the fact that we already pressed the button, so we can't press it again during the draw phase. So for this, we can just create a new variable here and call it pressed draw. And this is correct as a Boolean. Compile and save, and yes, so on default it should be false because we didn't press it, but we can drag it out here, set pressed draw, connect this, and set this to true. So yeah, once we press the button during wait, we set this to true, but we can also copy Control-C and Control-V, paste this on draw, because on draw we also press this, and we only want to be able to press this once. So we can then use this Boolean check on attack. So we can move this over, create some more space, and get pressed draw. We can just hold B on the keyboard and left click to create a branch, or simply right click and look for branch. And we can then connect this here. But actually we want to invert it, so we can drag off here and look for not Boolean. And connect this here. And connect the execution here and here. So this means we only allow all of this to happen in the case that we have not pressed draw yet. In the case we already have pressed it, like nothing is going to happen, because we're only allowed to press it once per round. And yes, later on we need to reset this when the round resets. But for now, again, we can compile and save, go back here, and I'm just going to press, and yes, you can see that the X shows up and we saved the fact that I already pressed it and I'm not allowed to press it again during draw. So what we want to do now on a successful draw is to change the sprite that we're showing, because now we're just showing the regular character, but we want to switch this over to the attack sprite instead of the idle sprite. So back on the event graph, after the draw and after we set press draw, we can simply drag off here and set sprite on the paper sprite. Drag this here. And here we want to select our Tanuki attack sprite. So if I just press now during the wait state, even after the exclamation mark shows up, I can't press again, like nothing happens. But if I wait it out and wait for the exclamation mark and press space, you can see that we switch over to the attack sprite. And yeah, everything looks fine here. However, I think I remember during the prototyping phase, the settings on the sprite actually changed after using this set sprite. So in case you don't have any issues here, you don't really need to change anything, but just to be sure, we can get the paper sprite again and set material, connect this here, and make sure to again select the translucent, unlit, sprite material, and again copy paste this and set translucent sort priority to 1. So I'm not quite sure why this is not happening now, but during my prototype I think this actually got reset. So just to make sure, we can keep this here and compile and save. And again, just to make sure that everything looks right, I'll press space now. Yes, and everything looks great. So this function is pretty long and this all serves the same purpose. So we can actually just select all of this, right click, and collapse to function. And we can call it set sprite. Move this over here and open it up. And we want to connect this new sprite to set sprite to create an input, and then compile and save. And back on our event graph, here where we call the set sprite, we want to select again our Tanuki attack. So yeah, we just created a simple function that combines these 3 nodes into one. So since we want to always change the material and change the translucency setting, this makes it a lot easier to understand what is happening here, and we simply need to select the sprite here. And again, compile and save just to make sure that everything works. Attack once the exclamation mark is there. And yes, everything looks fine. So the next step would be to make things move. So when the character attacks, we want to move towards the enemy.